everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Post-Fades and Cheesesteaks. With you, myself, Dakota, Mr. Timothy, of course. And we are in mourning. We are in mourning right now
Terrible.
because
Terrible.
and you know what? Even though the Eagles lost, weirdly enough, I'm glad that this report about Jason Kelsey came out about him potentially retiring because I feel like it distracted us from that abysmal game, at least me, for like a day where I was like reminiscing on the Super Bowl in 2017 and all the years he was here and like his first show with Andy Reid and all that. And or maybe he was Chip Kelly. I can't remember. But
He was Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly low key like drafted some really good players, to set up like, Ertz. I'm pretty sure it was Kelsey that he drafted,
I
but he
can't
just couldn't
remember.
run a roster.
No,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think Kelsey was the last year of Reed because I think Lane was the first round pick of
oh, you know
Kelly.
what? Yeah, that does sound about right. But yeah.
But
I
anyways.
mean, all right. So if you want to start out, I think that's fair. We can start off. I mean, there's a lot of venom and hatred in me, so we can cool into it. We can give a little toast to Jason Kelsey, and
Sure.
it's sad because I mean, like in a way, it almost feels like it's an end of an era. I know, Graham and Cox are both free agents, but Kelsey was was the lifeblood of this team. Like he was like the personality, the leader, just excellent player too. The dude was first team All Pro this year.
Hmm.
Like he was the perfect when you look at like sports icons, you need the perfect combination of obviously you have to be good. Like skill player wise is number one.
Hmm.
Second, you gotta have like longevity. You gotta like longevity to the point where your ego isn't too big. Ego usually usually calls for an early divorce, regardless of how good you are in
Yeah.
sports. And then the third one is just like, you know, leadership, off the field kind of stuff. He seems like a real good guy. People that do a lot of charity work. The podcast, I think, it made him even more lovable. And
Hmm.
he hit on all three, like almost better than any other athlete I can think of. Um, I mean, he's up there. He's my generation at least. Him, Chase Utley, the Brian Dawkins. I mean, Allen Iverson, like those legends of like Philly sports when we grew up.
I mean,
He's easily up there.
how many NFL teams, how many stadiums in the NFL can you go to or tailgates and you'll see offensive lineman jerseys like being worn?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Not
I mean, he's
many.
like the biggest character on the team.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because you think about, I know Travis Kelsey's doing the whole like Taylor Swift. He's in every commercial, blah blah blah. He does SNL. Like
Mm.
Jason Kelsey has that. He has that Amazon like reality the series they
I
did.
haven't
They
watched
followed
that
him
yet. I
around.
heard it
Like
was good though.
I haven't seen it either. And he has the podcast. Like we're talking about an NFL center. Like
Hmm.
usually these guys are just like big uglies, grunts. They don't speak. They're just nasty humans. And Jason Kelsey's
They're
got
not
like
trolls.
I mean, some of them. I mean,
Yeah, some of them
kind of,
might be.
But like, he like transcends his position,
Hmm.
and like his off the field career is going to be extensive. It'll be great. I mean, this one hurts. I think it hurts less to be honest with you because I think we all knew this was happening. I think we knew
Yeah,
before the season even started.
I'm not. I feel like I haven't gotten to the point where I'm like, "Fuck, how are we gonna replace him?" I'm more into the fact that like I'm in my head. I'm like, he's done so much for this team, the fans in the city, the community, the league, that I'm like, I would rather him hang it up now before he gets really badly hurt or has, long-term injuries because that's to me where like this is his breaking point for that because there's been a lot of players that have retired because just don't have it anymore. I mean, look at Djax, like he still had some talent, but he couldn't stay healthy and he was like pretty
Yeah,
much a shell of himself, right? He wasn't elite. But then you look at someone like Calvin Johnson, bro was still elite. Like he was still a top five receiver when he called it quits. But it was because of the
well, I
injuries
mean,
that he was sustaining. You ever see
waste your
his
time, waste
picture
your
of
time.
his fingers after he retired? They were all like
No,
crooked and like out of place, and apparently he was in pain all the time. And then that's why he started doing like CBD and weed and all that. But that's another story. But I feel like it's very similar because Jason is like you just said, first team All Pro, Pro Bowler in his
oh
what
yeah,
13th season. He's had it up
yeah,
because he has kids, he has a wife. his family he wants to take care of and be there for. He doesn't want to be, being airlifted out of bed to go to breakfast. He wants to be able to enjoy life and
Airlifted out of bed. That's quite the task. They should get a helicopter on command.
convertible house, just no, I
Fire
mean
house just
it's,
pops over.
I would rather him retire on his own terms healthy than you know, have to see him have a season-ending injury and then call it a career. I mean, I did hear
Oh,
a
I
report
agree.
that he said this year injuries that would, or like injuries are like nagging things that would take him like a day or two to recover from. We're taking him like a week to recover from. So I think
Oh
he
yeah,
he was
natural.
feeling the toll more this year than ever before. But
I mean, it's a physical position too. I mean, it sucks because he's iconic. Like you can't replace Jason Kelsey. Like
no,
they can, there's two aspects of it. You'll never replace Jason Kelsey. You can replace the starting center of the Philadelphia Eagles, but Jason Kelsey cannot be replaced. Like, and the starting center. I mean, if you just look at the positional play and like the player, like the starting center of the Philadelphia Eagles is a first time All Pro, or first team All Pro. You have to replace,
yeah,
but the leadership, the off the field, the likability of Jason Kelsey cannot be replaced. You will never get another Jason Kelsey. It's just never going to happen.
right.
But I mean, the other question, I mean, I think, obviously this was already in the works. Jurgens, I think he's going to slide over. Dickerson even played center in college, but I don't see them moving him.
Well, Dickerson was, I think, originally supposed to take over for Kelsey, but then I think we had injuries at the time. I think Brandon Brooks maybe. And then they're like,
Yeah.
hey, go in and play guard. And then we're like, wow, you're fucking amazing at guard. So he's staying
Yeah, I
there.
can't imagine. And then they drafted Jurgens, and he was another center in college, and Jason Kelsey said this is my guy, blah blah blah. I mean, I'd be
Yeah. No,
surprised if they
Jurgens has
moved
the role. Yeah.
Dickerson. Dickerson's amazing at left guard. I'd be shocked if they moved him to
Yeah.
a different position. So I mean, we'll see. I mean, Jurgens, I don't know. I think the jury's still out. He gets hurt a lot. It's hard to
Yeah.
really get a feel for him because
Well,
he's
I mean,
constantly injured.
we'll see.
Little stuff though.
I
It's
mean,
never
I'm pretty
anything
sure
big,
when
but
we drafted him, he was injured. So,
well, that's what I mean. I mean, it's just you just see what I'm
fingers
saying, and that's the other
crossed.
part of Jason Kelsey, man. Jason Kelsey never missed time.
Durability.
That's a whole other aspect of his game that is going to be tough to replace. I mean, it's a sad day. I mean, he's obviously not going to go anywhere. I think his off-field career is only just beginning. And then I mean, I guess we can get into the dark side of this. It's disgusting the way he went
Mm,
out. I mean,
poor
truly
guy.
just pathetic. I mean, do you want to go first? I don't. I'm just I'm so angry. I got to be honest. I'm angrier after this loss than I was after the Super Bowl, and it's not even close.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a page out of Charles Barkley's book. Say two words, but I'm really gonna say four words. All bark, no bite. That is my biggest takeaway. All they just kept telling us, all right, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. We're not playing to our standard. We got to get back to being violent and aggressive and physical. Physical. How many fucking teams just whiff on open field tackles as badly as the Eagles did in that playoff game? That's physical. That's violent to you.
Hmm.
Y'all forgot how to fucking tackle. I mean, we got Bradbury getting smoked by some,
Oh,
fourth string wide receiver. Now, Byard did take a good angle and he still should have made a play, but the kid had like 4.3 speed. He was fucking zooming. But no matter
I
what,
mean,
you make that fucking tackle. You make that tackle.
someone's got to slow it down.
Just the fall off
I
of our
told you.
secondary is because remember the beginning of the year, I was like, wow, this is like, or even last year when we had Slay and Bradbury for the first year, I was like, this is the greatest secondary we've had since Sheldon Brown and Leo Shepard or,
Yeah, you're
Sante
probably not wrong.
Samuel. It's like, what happened? Darius Slay was fine, but Bradbury was a fucking nightmare. I've never seen a
I told
corner just
you
fall
week
off a
like
cliff
10.
like this.
Hide them. Hide them.
I, I'm glad we didn't do our cornerback episode because he was going to be number 10 or 9 on my list, and I would have looked like a
Oh, this.
idiot.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Oh man, I defended him too, and he still let me down.
Yeah, it's my thing with the thing with this whole Eagles situation is it's not one or two people or players. This is a top to bottom problem. Like this fall off is unbelievable. They lost 6 of their last 7, and four of them were complete blowouts.
Yeah.
I mean, you barely beat the Giants. The Cardinals, to be honest with you, had your number too. This was disgusting. And when you see the collapse they had towards the end of the season, it makes you think, you know what? If they weren't so lucky in the beginning of the season, they probably wouldn't have won most of those games. Like, at no point did this season ever did I feel like, wow, a dominant team. That's a dominant team that showed up today. They just were a lot luckier in the first half than they were in the second half. The crappy play, the horrible coaching, the just inconsistent playing is just it was evident from week one to the final game of the season, and it starts in like every aspect of this team sucks. Jeffrey Lurie needs to look in the mirror and needs to start figuring out: am I going to continue running a clown organization, bringing in people that just say yes to me, or am I actually going to go out and get someone that's going to talk back, stand his ground? Because look at the coaches that are on the hiring cycle now. Harbaugh and Belichick, there is no way they're going to any organization where they don't have full control. But Delory will never do that. So he keeps getting yes men and these loser coordinators no one ever heard of. And then look at Howie, his number one best friend, yes man, that he would never give up the control so Howie can stay in position. Howie, we've praised so much on his roster building. Look at these players that he got.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Byard sucks. Robley was terrible. These veteran signings we give him so much credit for were terrible. James Bradbury bringing him back was criminal. He looks so bad. Shaq Leonard, a guy who looks like he's just broken, which the Colts
I,
clearly
I
saw.
don't think he
Like
even
they just
played a
went out.
snap in
But this
Tampa.
is what I mean. Like these were big signings that we thought. Nicholas Moreau, like these veteran signings that Howie brought in, all of them were terrible. All the
Mm.
guys we thought at the time made sense. Like maybe we all get caught up in the name recognition and everything, and maybe Howie does too. Because if you watch these players, it's almost thinking like, what the hell were you looking at?
I
To
think
then,
I think Byron
and
was a
just
bit of an anomaly, but the other ones, yes, like they were strange signings. Like
but
the
look at the
fact that
track record.
we rolled into the season with a N'Kobe Dean question mark because we haven't seen him play a full season. I haven't even seen him start. And then they literally signed Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack off the fucking street 2 weeks before the season started. One of them retired, and then unretired, went and played for the Steelers. And then they pick up
I should have told you that should have been a red flag right there.
Nicholas Morrow, who is one of the I can't remember a time. You know who he reminds me of? He reminds me of Nate Gary. And I'm like, every time he stepped on the field, I'm like, how is this guy starting on this team? And yet, every week he was still out there starting on the team. He would make one good play a game, and then 99 of the rest of the plays were horrible. I
Oh, it's
just
brutal. It's
I
terrible. None
don't
of those
know
signings were good.
I don't know what it's going to take for them to say, wow, we should look at the Ravens. Wow, they have an incredible secondary, a good defensive line. And wow, what is that? What do they do at linebacker? They invest in the position because it is the middle of the field. And where did the Eagles get gashed all year? In the middle of the field. So if that doesn't wake Howie up and say, wow, maybe we should get some linebackers that are actually good and break philosophy,
No,
I don't know.
no, and but this is your top issue. This roster wasn't very good in certain aspects. You are right. The linebackers were a joke. The secondary was
It's
a joke. It's so
and
bad. James Bradbury's going to make $17 million next year.
but
Like that's a contract you can't get out of.
all that aside, this is still a top 10 talent team. And all this,
Oh well,
but all this aside, like it's
let's get
just
back to that because I agree with you. The roster was too good for what the results were. So let's get back to we hit on the top part of this embarrassment of an organization. Let's get to the middle part. Let's get to this coaching staff that are more
mm.
clowns than they are actual coaches. Nick Sirianni, man,
Circus.
I like. You know what? He's a guy you like when things are going well. You can't
That's the
stand
problem.
when things are going bad.
That's
And
the
you know what?
problem.
There was so many times where you're like, you got to step up. You got to right the ship because your team's falling apart. Your team is losing mojo. You've got AJ Brown, Dallas Goddard yelling at your quarterback on the sideline. Like there's certain coaches in the league that would never happen. Embarrassing
I kind
organizations
of
that
liked
happens
seeing
on
that
a yearly
actually.
basis. But for what reason? It's the playoffs. Like we should be past this.
Yeah.
Why? Like I don't want to see Dallas Goddard yelling at Jalen Hurts. I want to see things working. AJ Brown, who the hell knows what's going to happen there? That's how bad this culture is set up. And Nick Sirianni doesn't have the capability to, I think, coach. I mean, yeah, last year was pretty good, but you lost both coordinators, and I think we underestimated how bad that was going to be. Because I'll give, Jonathan Gannon, we ripped a lot, and I think he cost the Super Bowl. But damn, man, the two coordinators we went with after that were shit shows.
Yeah.
Switching defense coordinators in week 10, we thought was a questionable move. It turned out to be just as questionable, idiotic move that we thought it would be when it happened because no good team actually does that. And Sirianni's an offensive minded coach. That's a very technical term we'll go with. He's an offensive minded coach. Dude, take over your offense. Because I know a lot of people shit on the Rooney rule and say the Rooney rule doesn't work. I can only think that the reason Brian Johnson is getting head coaching interviews is because of the Rooney rule. Because I don't know what you saw this year that made you think that this guy has any idea what he's doing as a coach. Brian Johnson's offense is something a blind 10-year-old would call on Madden. And the problem is, it's the same offense he called in week 1 as it was in the wild card playoff round that we just got smoked in. Nothing changed. Run deep, do your screen passes, and quarterback draws. Nothing changed. But eventually, every defensive coordinator, every defensive assistant, every defensive video coordinator in the league could eventually figure out that these are the 3 plays they run. It's
Uh-huh.
not that hard to stop. And even worse to that is that this roster, the defense had some turnover. We talked about that. The offense, not so much. You lost Isaac Seumalo, and then you upgraded the running back position to DeAndre Swift from Miles Sanders. Otherwise, what did you change? This was the
Mhm.
same roster that was dominating last year. You brought in a Bozo. Oh, you didn't bring him in. You promoted a Bozo to offensive coordinator, and in no point Nick Sirianni had the gumption, the leadership to take over. Or you know what? Even worse, maybe he did. Maybe he did start taking over, and the terrible play calling and offensive scheme just stayed the same because this coaching staff was just a clinic of embarrassment all year. And the fact that it never changed is insane. And you want to get to the final layer, the players on themselves, like James Bradbury alone, man, get off the field. I'm done with you. I don't know what it would take to get you off this team, but you can't tackle. You're getting burned left, right, and center. You suck. There's not much about it. This team is just so dead. Those players play with zero passion. Zero. They
Yeah,
have
there's
no gumption.
there's no
The young
fire.
guys fell
I
off.
don't.
Like Dean can't stay healthy. Jordan Davis is fat. Jalen Carter, I mean, hit a rookie wall, but I think we can expect that. The secondary, I mean, they got torched a lot, but they're rookies. But dude, like, this is a veteran roster that was in the Super Bowl last year. They told me that their backs were against the wall, that they were gonna feel it. They felt it in the locker room. They liked being called out. They were the underdogs again. They knew in the playoffs we were gonna turn it up. And you rolled over and died.
Mm.
Josh Sweat and Reddick, I didn't even know you were still on the field. The only time I knew you were on the field was when people were pointing out the fact that you were in coverage for some idiotic reason. Just embarrassing level of performance from the players, embarrassing from the coaches, and Laurie and Howie run an embarrassing organization. This collapse is something that should be looked at as embarrassing as the Patriots season or the Panthers season because you do not deserve to be in the playoffs. You look like complete frauds. I mean, at least the Vikings last year, who I think a lot of people were comparing to us, they looked okay going to the playoffs. I mean, they lost, but this team was dead 6 weeks ago. And no one in that locker room had enough gumption or enough fire to do anything about it. It just pisses me off so much. Like the collapse from this team to last year is ridiculous. I almost prefer them to go 6-11. Like, because that's really what they were. They're a 6-11 team that got extremely lucky in the beginning of the season. They're closer to 6-11 than they are 11-6. And on top of that, I don't think the Bucks are really good. My God, they dropped. How many passes did the Bucks drop? And we still
Uh,
got blown out.
so
Like it just,
so
it's
I think that's
numbing,
what
man.
I think that's what was also funny is like the same thing that was happening all year with they look like shit, but somehow they're still in the game happened again. They were only down a score, and Jalen
Oh
Hurts
yeah.
made one of the most bonehead plays I've ever seen him make. Tried to run backwards, had no
Oh
sense
my
of
God.
awareness, then tried to fucking throw it between his legs upside down, took a safety, and that the safety was the turning point in the game. That took him out because that
Yeah.
made it 2 possessions or whatever. And then they couldn't put and you know what? You know what the worst part is about this team? I don't think there was a single game where all 3 units, offense, defense, and special teams, played a good game together.
No.
Against the Buccaneers, when the offense would make an appearance and score a touchdown or run, drive down the field, the defense would disappear and give up on the score. And then the defense is like, okay, well, we're gonna sack Baker Mayfield on 4 straight drives to close it out and force a punt. They got what I think 5 sacks that game, and then they were all like third down. Huge. The defense stepped up. Who would have thought? And then Jalen Hurts and the Eagles go 4-0. Like
It's just
what?
painful.
What did you see the picture going around social media where Jalen is about to get his shit rocked from a blitz, and there's like no one within like 40 yards of the middle of the field?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, you're calling plays where the linemen are 5 yards down the field and the wide receivers aren't even out of their break. Like logically, that doesn't make sense.
the
We
the
still can't
routes
pick up a
the
blitz.
routes don't
I
make. I don't.
I just curious, like you got the Giants blitzed you nearly every play the last week of the season. Did you not think the Buccaneers were going to do the exact same thing after they saw how well it worked? And you can't make adjustments. Like that's on Nick, man. You can't adjust at all. You
Am
lost the Super
I?
Bowl because you couldn't adjust. You couldn't adjust the whole season.
I still. It's so hard because it's so fresh, but I'm like 50-50 on like I still think Nick could get it done with the right coordinators. But I'm also in this weird space where the Super Bowl loss, I don't blame on our players because even the Bradbury thing, like that was a fucking we don't even talk about that, but that was a 50-50 penalty. The the thing that I walked away with from that Super Bowl loss is that we got out coached. But I looked at it, I was
Yeah,
like, okay, but that's, Andy Reid, he has a great staff. Eric Bieniemy, and I forget
Spagnola,
and
first year
Spagnola, yeah,
coordinators.
but like legendary coordinators. I'm like, you know
Yeah,
what?
Steichen and Gannon in their
They'll,
first year.
yeah,
Yeah, I
they'll
get that.
they'll they'll learn, they'll get better. And then as the season went on, we were escaping all these games, and we were giving the opponents a lot of tape on us and how to ways that we can be beaten and showing how boring and vanilla our offense is. And then these last 7 weeks, I have seen Nick Sirianni and his staff get out coached by teams with losing records week after week after week. And then I saw a Todd Bowles, and respect to Todd Bowles, man, went to Temple, but he's been a little shaky as a head coach since taking over for Arians. And he got outclassed once again by other coaches on the other team. So that worries me. That like you said, Sirianni, he doesn't adjust. He's got
It's
this.
incapable.
He's got this dog mentality, but if dog can't get off the leash, there's no dog barking.
Sirianni,
I
his
don't know.
perfect setup is Sirianni's perfect setup is bringing coordinators that are good at playing call plays, good at building a defense, good at adjustment, like he had last year. And he can be the rah-rah guy.
Mhm.
He can be, the let me get them all juiced up. Let me do the head bob and the camera. Let me cry on the national anthem. Let me wear my fuck Dallas shirt. Let me get the guys into it. Like when everything's going well, he's a coach that people will
He's a
buy
great
into.
rah
The
rah
players will.
guy. Yes.
Exactly. He's a player's coach. But it's almost so obvious how fundamentally as a coach he is. Like he just gets embarrassed. And it
Very
was so
simple.
obvious this
He's
year
very
when he
simple.
brings in new coordinators. And listen, he struck gold last year. Say what you want about Gannon, and I'm not Gannon's biggest fan, but Gannon did a very good job last year with the defense they had. And Steichen, I mean, I think we're about to see Steichen's I think he's a really top-notch coach. What do you
Like
do with the
I
this
hated
year?
Gannon by the Super Bowl like everyone else, but I mean, I was okay with him throughout the season because we finished top 10 in like every category on defense. Granted, we didn't
Well, of
have that hard
course.
of a schedule, but we still were like what, number one in sacks, top five in takeovers, top 10 in points allowed. It's just like I don't we didn't lose that much talent for it to have changed so significantly, which leads me to believe a lot of it is linked to coaching or
It has to be.
practicing or play
What's the biggest
calling.
change? I mean, defensively, I know, like, listen, is it Matt Patricia's fault when James Bradbury can't tackle? Probably not. I mean,
No,
James Bradbury had some easy tackles that, yeah, there's, college players that could make these things. But at the same time, like, you're putting your good players in tough positions. Sweat and Reddick should never be in coverage. Like these schemes never made sense. And don't get me wrong, like I also think part of that is switching to a defense coordinator in week 10, which you know what? I get it. Things weren't going well. It was almost like a desperation move, and it felt like a desperation move, but this was never gonna work. Let's be honest. You're switching your whole defensive scheme. You would hope Patricia would keep the same scheme and tweak some things a little bit, but he was going with the change in the whole thing, and it was never going to work. But again, that's something like Nick almost makes a knee jerk reaction because he's like, he can't figure it out himself. He can't rally up the troops. He can't, he can't lead. And I mean, I know the talk right now is, fire Sirianni and everyone's down to it. And, I can understand it. And this collapse was so bad. He deserves it. I know he was in the Super Bowl last year. I'm in the belief that I'd keep Sirianni, fire all the coordinators, but I'd probably keep Nick mostly because two things. One, bad organizations fire coaches constantly. Look at every bad organization.
Yeah.
They're constantly firing coaches. I think there is something to sustain, just bring in the coach, let him build something. I think there is something to that. Now, next year, his seat's going to be very warm. And then two, this goes back to Howie and Laurie. Like, Howie and Laurie aren't going to bring in a guy that is a Belichick, Harbaugh, or I don't think they're going to bring in a Vrabel either. They'll never do it because those guys are going to want more power than they're ever going to give up. Because you know what, Howie and Laurie are going to hire guys that obscure hires.
I think Vrabel probably wouldn't ask for too much.
I don't know. I don't like if you're Vrabel, man. He's in demand coach. Why would you go to somewhere like that? Like Laurie and Howie have been rumored to not, pick the coordinators. But look at their hiring history. I love Doug. Doug was an obscure hire. He was an offensive the quarterback coach or offensive coordinator with the Chiefs that no one really knew. He was a backup quarterback for Andy, so Andy kind of gave him the gig. And then Sirianni, I literally never heard of Sirianni's name once before they hired him. I'm not firing Nick just to do that again. Go get rid of the coordinators, bring in some real coordinators so they can actually call the plays and schemes, and then let Nick be the rah-rah guy. Go back to that formula because that one actually worked.
I mean, we'll see what happens. I think my only pause on Sirianni being fired, like for being fired, is that we have a very good pool of head coaches available right now. So it's a very not like odd year for that. Normally you have like one or two good candidates and then a bunch of question marks. But I mean, like you said, Harbaugh, Belichick, Vrabel,
but Harbaugh and Belichick for sure aren't going to come here because they would have to take over Howie's responsibility, which won't happen. I mean, Belichick was the GM for 20 years. And there's no way he's going somewhere else. And Harbaugh, this is what Harbaugh got fired in the Niners for, was him and the GM didn't get along because Harbaugh wanted more control and the GM wasn't giving it up. So those two, I can't see actually happening.
And if they were going to replace him, it has to be for a older, proven head coach because while the Texans offensive coordinator and the Lions offensive coordinator are very enticing, we already have that with Nick. Like we already have a young guy that's supposed to be whatever. Like we need I want a well-established defensive coordinator, and I want if you want another young offensive coordinator, fine, but he's got to be ballsy as fuck and creative. I don't want no boring bullshit. You have a very dynamic player at quarterback in Jalen Hurts. He can run, he can throw, and I need you have two top 15 wide receivers. Let's talk about Smitty. The only player on offense that came to play yesterday or on Monday. 8 catches, 148 yards. You know who was second in receiving on the team? DeAndre Swift with 32 receiving yards. That is way too big of a gap. Whether that's play calling, whether that's Jalen, whether that's players not getting open, it's probably a little bit of everything. But I
think, offensively, I think the biggest issue was coaching. Like I already touched on this. Like the only two player differences you had from last year was Sayamalu and Miles Sanders. This was the same roster from the Super Bowl.
I wouldn't have thought losing TJ Edwards was going to be this big. Super average, but consistent linebacker. He's not going to do anything special. But like, what the hell? Like
I'm not fighting for Patricia or Desai's job, but
no,
Howie's got to answer for some of these defensive because Moreau sucked. Not getting a linebacker was a bad decision. Gardner Johnson signing a 1 year. Cunningham was fine, but you needed.
But I don't want fine linebacker.
Yeah, but fine is okay when you're not playing against ass. But you had ass and fine. That was the problem. Fine looks a lot less fine when it's next to ass.
Well, when it was Nakobe and Cunningham, our defense actually looked pretty solid in the middle. but then he got hurt. Then Cunningham couldn't stay healthy. So
And you know what? It was all those mid-season acquisitions. Leonard clearly didn't have it. Kevin Byard was a bad pick. I mean, listen, I'll join the list of people that were all excited and thought it was a great move and praising Howie. That turned out to be terrible.
yeah,
Robley didn't do
I don't
anything for
know.
you.
I don't know what happened with
Bradbury was
Byard.
terrible.
He's also
I mean,
31.
it's just like this defense, personnel wise, I think was the biggest problem. Like
Yeah.
you had guys constantly missing tackles. The scheme sucked, don't get me wrong, but constantly missing tackles. Jordan Davis, like what happened? He had the same fall off he had as a rookie. Bradbury stunk. I know we had some young guys in the secondary, and they're gonna, eat their, they're gonna get better, but they got torched a couple times, and he didn't really have any depth for that. Like, you have two older guys in Bradbury and Slade. Your only veterans, your only secondary options after that are two rookies. I just, the defensive line depth wasn't the same. You got rid of Barnett, you didn't really replace him. Like Howie's got to answer for some of this defensive stuff, but if you're keeping Nick tomorrow, I mean, I want to put etched into the contract. Like Jeffrey Lurie, when he announces I'm keeping Nick Sirianni as a coach, has to agree and say Frank Reich will be the offensive coordinator. Because I mean, there's one guy. I mean, I don't want another young offensive mind. I want an established guy that can actually coach football. Because I don't think Nick Sirianni can. Go get Frank Reich. I don't think he wants to be a head coach. Who knows? Maybe he takes a year off. He's been fired twice in 2 years, but he should be your offensive coordinator. Defensively, I mean, get a guy. I kind of like the former player idea. The Dan Campbells, the D'Amico Ryans. I kind of like that swagger. And this defense could probably use it because they got no swagger. They're
What,
so soft.
what would you think about who's coaching the Cowboys secondary? Al Harris, right?
Al Harris, I mean, I couldn't stand him as a player, but life
He
comes
he
360,
used
I
to play on
guess.
the Eagles
Yeah, but he was
way
awful.
back.
But I mean, listen, I would I would take. I mean, Al Harris has done a very nice job. The secondary is he lives for turnovers, which I kind of like.
Yeah.
That secondary. Say what you want, Diggs, Bland. They both get torched a lot, but they also get a lot of interceptions.
Yeah, my thing is, like I said, if I need I need balance. So if they're gonna go young again at a coordinator position, I need them to balance that with someone who we know what we're getting. They're going to like even Wink Martindale, the Giants DC, like someone like that who's
Wouldn't
like
hate that. Would
I
not
wouldn't
hate
hate
that.
it. I wouldn't hate it. I loved when Jim Johnson ran this defense. I loved seeing blitzes all the time. That defense is so fun to watch. But yeah, it's tough. I really don't even want to talk about off-season stuff yet. I think
I know, but you can't
we'll have
help.
to
Well,
do an
this is what
episode where
happens.
we go cut or keep through the entire 53
This
man
is what happens
roster.
when your team
But
embarrasses themselves on the way out. You can't help but think of the future. I'll say, well, we can end on this, but
okay,
offensively, your roster, depending on what happens with AJ Brown, I think he stays, but we'll see.
he's not going anywhere. I don't know why people are even
Yeah,
making this
offensively,
a
Kelsey
thing.
leaves, but I think offensively, you're bringing back pretty much the entire offense. Hurts is here, Goddard, Smith. I think Brown will be here. Lane's going to be here. Dickerson's going to be here. Malata's going to be here. We'll see about Swift. He probably goes, but
Hmm.
most of those pieces are going to be back. You
Yeah.
need to get an actual offense coordinator because I think what we really learned this year is Sirianni is not a great X's and O's coach. He's more of a rah rah guy, which is fine when you're winning. Defensively, this is where Howie's going to really have to start making his magic because one, these young guys he drafted, they better start stepping up. Kobe Deem has to step on the field. Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter need to take the next step, and Ringo and Ricks have to really start showing something. Even Brown, like the young secondary of Brown, Blankenship, Ricks, and Ringo, they need to show promise because there was moments where there was promise, but yeah, Blankenship and Brown are both hurt a lot. I mean, Brown's already going to be out.
Well,
Ricks and Ringo showed promise, but these guys have to step up. And if they don't, Howie's got to start making some moves
I would
because the
think
defensive line doesn't have the depth they normally do either.
next year, assuming he's healthy from his ACL, Sidney Brown, I believe, is either starting at safety or he's starting at slot corner, depending on if Maddox is still here. Um, and
No, let
then
him walk. I'm done with him too.
It'd probably be Reed and Brown. I'm still on the keep Kevin Byard around train, but if the contract's
No,
too much,
no. See you later. Nope, that ain't happening.
well,
What did you besides the fact that you loved Kevin Byard, what did he actually do in his tenure with the Eagles that makes you think I want to keep Kevin Byard?
just based off his name,
Yeah,
based off what
see,
I've
his
seen in the
name.
past.
Yeah, listen, Emmett Smith is a hell of a player who's got a good name. That doesn't mean I want him on my team either.
Okay,
Look at
I'm not going
Shaq
to defend
Leonard.
him. He did.
Shaq Leonard is also a
What?
name who was really good. I don't want him on my team anymore either.
Well, okay, but there's a difference. See, the, we just had a Pro Bowler from last year get traded to us at a position of need. I don't know if he didn't fit the scheme, if he couldn't pick up the playbook quick enough, and then we switched to Patricia, and he had to learn a new playbook. So I don't know what it was, but he was missing tackles, which is not part of the playbook, so that was concerning.
Very concerning.
He only had one
Even
interception, I
listen,
think, since he got here. But
very good players, regardless of scheme or whatever. They make plays. I've seen a lot of great players or good players play well on terrible teams.
well, yeah, but I don't know. We'll see what the future holds. But all I know is that the first three rounds of this year's draft better be like I don't know, edge, linebacker, and corner. Like they
Oh yeah,
need
because yeah,
this defense is old and they need to get younger quickly. I like Keely Ringo. I would be 100% down for a Keely Ringo Darius Slay tandem in Slay's last year.
yeah. I kind of like
Um,
that. I think Ringo showed you enough promise. I mean, we knew he was going to get torched. That's just nature of rookies.
yeah,
Rick's, I mean, we'll see. The jury's still out on that
I
one,
don't.
but I think I saw enough
I
about Ringo to get me looking forward to next year.
as someone who like enjoys defensive back positions and watching them play. I was not impressed with Eli Rex. I don't know what everyone else is seeing. Now I said the same thing about Reed Blankenship, and he's still not great for me. He's a good safety, but he gets burned too often. I mean, safeties get burned. It's nothing new, but I don't know. I apply with him as
I
a
mean, it brings up a
starter,
good point to you. I mean,
but
it brings up a good point that you brought up earlier. A young secondary, which is what we have. I mean, Ricks, Ringo, Brown, Reading, Blankenship, they all are probably going to see some serious time next year.
yeah.
Having a guy like Al Harris would probably help a lot. I mean, I would be curious to see what happens with
You
Dallas. I know, listen,
watch Al Harris.
we
He comes here and Sidney Brown's gonna have 10 interceptions next year.
I mean, I know, like, I mean, I guess we can, I think I got most of my venom and hatred out of my body, so we can poke fun and have a little joy. I don't know what the Cowboys do because oof, I know the Eagles look rough, but dude, that is a tough spot to
you know
be in.
what's crazy? Watching football, the last time I had a grin as wide on my face as I did seeing the Cowboys get throttled
Oh,
in their own
beautiful.
stadium was when I was at the Eagles Bills game in the pouring rain watching Jalen Hurts score in overtime to help beat the Bills. That was the last time I had a smile that big on my face. And
Is
then
it
the
sad
Packers
that
came in and like just
that Cowboys Packers game was the happiest I've been
oh man,
football terms
it
in
was
like
amazing.
2 months.
It was
Like,
glorious. I was
I mean,
I was in heaven.
I think that's something to keep an eye on if
Um,
you're looking at Al Harris. Because well, now that Seattle's job's open, I wouldn't be surprised if Quinn goes there.
yeah.
I still wouldn't be surprised if Jerry fires McCarthy. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think Jerry's still trying to process the fact. Every time you hear him, he's like, I don't know where we're at because I only thing I've been thinking about was hosting another playoff game. And you could probably imagine Jerry invited all of his friends. He had a whole parade set up. The whole thing was going to be a whole. He didn't even fathom the thought of them losing to the Packers, and it's
No,
beautiful.
no. But yeah, so wrapping up, Buccaneers defeat the Eagles 32-9. We're done with that game. Cowboys lost to the Packers, and this score does not indicative
Oh,
of
it wasn't
the
even
actual game
close.
because it was like 41-16 at one point.
The
But
Eagles and Buccaneers game was closer than the Cowboys and Packers game was.
sad. But the Packers won 48-32. I think the only blunder the Packers did was they took their starters out, which is so embarrassing if you're on the other team. They took their starters out like the end of the third quarter or something.
Yeah, that was dumb.
And then they're like, okay, get back in there because now the Cowboys are actually like catching up a little bit here. So I think Cowboys made it interesting, but I mean, at the end of the day, they were still down two scores, so they really weren't going to do anything. But that man, I never like. I mean, you get into games as a fan of sports, fan of football and all that, but I was standing up, like with up off my couch, clapping when I saw that pick six. I was having so much fun when Jari Alexander had that sweet pick, like right like the 20-yard line. I was like,
That
wow,
was
Dak
beautiful.
is just giving this
Terrible.
ball away. And That and then all the memes that followed, man, it was a phenomenal day. And we needed that because we were being groomed for some misery
Yeah,
the next day. But
it was the only joy I had that weekend. There was a couple, I mean, mostly blowouts this week. I mean,
yeah,
you
that
go
was pretty
around the league.
surprising. Texans beat the Browns 45-14. That game also reminds me a little bit of Eagles Bucks only because it was close for a while and then but the Browns just fell apart at one point. And then like we had our safety, the Browns had back-to-back pick sixes, and that's when it like
Yeah. Listen, the
that's
Joe Flacco ride was fun, but
it
it had to come
was.
to an
He
end.
showed his age for sure.
Yeah.
But shout out to the Texans, man. They're fun. I would love nothing more than a Texans versus Lions Super Bowl. But mostly because I don't want to see the 49ers in the Super Bowl. But
I hear that.
yeah, Texans, CJ Stroud, man. Who would have thought that he would have outperformed everyone else in that rookie class and look as good as he has? Setting
Now
records
he's going to
left
get
and
a real
right.
test. He's getting a real test. Now the Chiefs obviously beat the Dolphins, who I think we can confirm are frauds. We
In
kind of all thought that all year.
negative 4 degrees. The game
Yeah,
was
there was just like you knew that was never going to win. One, we know the Dolphins are frauds. Two,
yeah.
like the Chiefs, as bad as they were going to show up, but and it was cold. Like it just was never going to work out for them. But now, I mean, I don't think the Texans are going to beat the Chiefs, but I like the matchup of the first year head coach, rookie quarterback going against like I mean the powerhouse of the league right now in Mahomes and Reed. So that'll be fun.
Well, it's Bills Chiefs, so you're right. He won't be facing him.
Or Bills. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Texans
The Bills
Ravens.
though. The Bills are the team I'm now on. I'm on root for the Bills because I feel good. I love their fan base. They are hot, man. Take you back to when the Eagles played the Bills. They were 6-6, just lost to the Eagles in bone crushing fashion. We were what 9-1, I think,
Hmm.
around there, 10-1. And the Bills then, I think they won pretty much every game since then. They just won a playoff game. Now the Chiefs come to Buffalo after the Bills got a nice, a nice healthy win against the Steelers. Don't think
Yeah.
it wasn't really close. So we'll see what happens there. And then the Texans, of course, go against the Ravens. And yeah, I don't know if that's a great matchup for them. But listen, it's been a fun ride. This was a win of a season, regardless of what happens for them.
I think if there's a year, if so, I mean we've been joking on this podcast the last couple of years about how the Bills can't get past the second round because Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs are always in his way, but they're always at Arrowhead. So I think if
True.
there's ever a year, um, this is the one to do it. You got home field. Like you said, they're looking good. I mean, they were up 21-0 on the Steelers, and then let the Steelers come back to make it a 4-point game. Then they, scored 10 more points. But um, we'll see. I think that'll hopefully be the game of the week.
Hmm.
And then probably the best game of the wild card weekend was the Lions. First
Yeah.
playoff victory in what, 30 years, beat the Rams 24-23. I know Eagles fans are pretty terrible people, but Lions
They are
fans,
terrible.
why are you booing Matt Stafford? Like I know he's on the other team, but
Nah,
that
no.
man gave
I
you
love it. No.
mm,
Gave you what? What did he give you?
he gave some glimmers of hope.
No, he didn't. They lost near that was their first playoff win in 30 years. What do you mean? What did he give you? You're not going to cheer on in a playoff game? You're insane. Regular season game, fine. Not in a playoff game. Get out of here with that. I loved it. You're
Well,
like, but there's no way. Like, I understand he was there for a while and he did some cool things, but in essence, they didn't win shit when he was there.
yeah, but it's more of like he
No,
gave
not in a playoff game.
he gave his heart and his body to that city for 9-10 years before getting
No,
shipped off. But
no, not in a playoff game.
okay,
Playoff game, he's
tough
dead to
crowd,
me.
tough crowd. But yeah, happy for them. I used to very much dislike Jared Goff, called him a fraud, a bust for many years. Um, but I'm also a little happy for him. He got a little bit of revenge. Um, he's helping bring a team that's, like we said, never won a playoff game in years to promised land. I mean, I saw a video of him being driven around Detroit, and fans are like yelling at the car, like "You are my king! You are my king!" So
Exactly. I mean, he's brought
they're
them to
being
heights they
worse
haven't seen.
now. If they lose, they gonna put their head on a swivel,
I mean, it's
But
still. I mean, if they lose to the Bucks, yeah, then yeah. But I think they beat the Bucks. But then, I mean, it's gonna be an interesting matchup. you have two
Now
teams that you kind of
that
expected to be there, and then you have the Bucks and the Packers. Do we think the Niners just roll right through the Packers, or are they going to give them a little fight?
I think that the thing the Packers have going for them is that no one knows what to expect from them. Like this is Jordan Love's like it's kind of reminds me a little bit of how like last year we had Jalen Hurts in his like first year in like a I mean he had his year before that when we lost to the Bucks, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
like
The
a
Eagles were
good
the number one seed that
but it
year,
was a
though.
different offense. So they were very explosive. And I think this is kind of the same where the Packers like are kind of a question mark. Like you don't really know what their offense is going to do, and the receivers are very questionable at times, but then also like can be wide open against a supposed good defense in Dallas. Like I was cracking up at how what was it? The tight end had like no player within like 40
Oh
yards
yeah,
of him on that one throw. But
I mean, I agree with you. They kind of, stuck up on him. After they snuck up on the Cowboys, they're not going to sneak up on the Niners. I think the Niners win that one pretty comfortably, but it'll be fun.
I mean, yeah, I think overall the Niners should win. They probably will win. I don't think it's gonna be a blowout though. I think the Packers will hang tough. A lot of question marks on the uh blanking on his name, the head coach of the Packers.
Four.
But yeah, LaFleur, there were a lot of questions on him halfway through the season, and he really turned it around and took a youngest team. I think it was the
Yeah,
youngest team to ever make the playoffs, average age of 25, which is insane.
the youngest team in the league, which is, especially because most teams like the Panthers, you
And
would expect to be really young. Yeah,
essentially your quarterback's rookie year, right? Because it's the first time he's ever been a full-time starter. So, I mean, I don't like the Packers, just being based off history with the Eagles back in the Donovan McNabb days. Um, Never really liked them, but I hate the 49ers. So I
oh
would
yeah, they
love
suck.
for Green Bay to get an upset. But I'm curious. Do you think it do you think if the Bucks beat the Lions that it is slightly destiny for them? Like,
If the Bucks beat the Lions,
Is this one of those like Linsanity runs where like they just caught lightning in a bottle and they might actually somehow make it to the Super Bowl and take it over?
oh no, no. I
No?
kind of thought this all year. This is what pissed me off so much about the Eagles is like I think the NFC is really not that good.
Hmm.
I think the Niners were head and shoulders clearly better than anyone else. And I really
Yeah.
think that the toughest contender to the Niners was us if we could ever get our shit together, which we never did.
Hmm.
Like if you look at the roster, the Niners are so much better than both these and all
Well,
three of these
yeah.
teams. The
Yeah.
Lions could maybe give them a fight because they can score with them, but I don't know. I think the Niners are probably going to win the NFC easily, but we'll see. Now listen, we're not doing picks. I don't want to do picks. We got to stick with our gumptions. I'm sticking with the Bills and Niners Super Bowl. I don't want to second guess myself now. Not looking for
Uh,
outtakes.
you
I'm
know who,
rolling with what I got.
you know who the Buccaneers, I mean, not the same dynamic, but the Buccaneers kind of remind me of the Jaguars in 2017. Not obviously because the Jaguars had a, once a lifetime defense, but
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
it's the more of like the scrappy quarterback and like a team that's really not supposed to be there vibe. I think that's what I'm getting from them, but
They
um
remind me more of the 2017 Vikings. Like scrappy quarterback, but they had like solid players. They're like
I
the team had
guess
good star players littered around, but overall were like an okay team. The Jaguars, I mean, like you said, they had historic defense. The Buccaneers don't have anything that resembles that Jaguar defense anywhere on that roster.
what's one last note on the Eagles Bucks game. I don't know if it's sad or impressive based on the fact that
Probably
Baker still
sad.
had based on the fact that Baker still had 300 passing yards, but the Eagles held Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both under 50 yards. And Godwin had a
Well, yeah,
garbage time touchdown. So,
that's because you couldn't tackle Trey Palmer, so it didn't really matter.
yeah, or and their tight end ran free all game. So,
Yeah, so oh
but
well. I
I
I
like you
think I've
said, I think we obviously will stick with our brackets. Mine's already in the trash can because I picked the Eagles first Chiefs. Um
tough.
I had let me tell you, I had so many people DM me on my personal account on Instagram because I shared it to my story. They're like, bro, you can't like those people who pick the Eagles in the Super Bowl, you can't have them ever give you a take for football ever again. Like they should never make an appearance on your show. I
I
was
mean, we
like,
let you on the show, so
I was one of them, but I was
yeah,
half kidding. But yeah, we'll
that's a
stick with
good
our stick
that's
with
a good
our
thing to end on.
stick
Just
with
never
our
let anyone that picked the Eagles in the Super Bowl on the show, but here we are with a guy who's been on every episode. So good little
well.
ending right there.
What I'll say is before Tim cuts us off here, we'll stick with our brackets and see who ends up on top. But for the sake of our audience, we'll still pick the games since they're obviously going to be different than what we did. So AFC side, I think we both have the same kind of vibe here. Ravens Texans. Who do you like in that?
I like the Texans, but they're not going to knock off the
Mm.
Ravens. The Ravens are going to be there. This isn't like Lamar's first year when they had that bye. He's ready. The team's ready.
Now, if the Texans beat the Ravens, though, are the Ravens all of a sudden like in the same cowboy territory? It was like, what the fuck did you just
Oh,
do?
if the Tex. Oh yeah, there's going to be a problem there. I can't see it. I just can't see it.
Yeah, I'd love to pick them, but I think the run comes to an end, so I'll go Ravens as well. And then Chiefs Bills in
And
Buffalo
my new team, baby. I got them in the Super Bowl. I love them. I'm on the Buffalo Bill bandwagon. Let's go.
until they prove me wrong. I haven't seen them beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, so I will stick with the Chiefs here, beating Buffalo in Buffalo.
Fair enough.
Um, Packers Niners.
Yeah, this one again. It's very similar in the AFC and NFC.
Mm,
Both two young teams that knocked off a team they probably shouldn't, but they're going to get steamrolled by a better team. The Niners, there's no way they lose this one. I'll take the Niners.
yeah, for the sake of my integrity as a NFL analyst, I will take the
Your integrity's
49ers.
hanging by a thread
It
because you
is
picked the Eagles in the Super Bowl.
dangling. I'll take the Niners. And then Buccaneers Lions. This is gonna be a weird game. I'm not really sure if it's gonna be close or could be probably close by half, and then the Lions pull away. So I'm gonna go with Detroit here, getting to the NFC Championship game.
I'm just sticking to the fact that what I said earlier. Like the Buccaneers did not look good. They dropped so many wide open
Oh
passes, and
yeah,
we still
no.
got blown out.
Yeah.
Like they don't look like a good team. I'll take the Lions.
All right. Well, there we have it. We'll be back next week to recap Eagle-less playoffs once again. And then a bit down the road, we'll
Oh
get
boy.
into off-season stuff and all that. But hey, maybe we'll take a break. Who knows? Maybe we need to
Yeah, we'll probably need
vent
it.
alone with our Eagle frustration. But hopefully, this time next week, there is some coordinator seats empty in the Eagles' office. We can only
There
hope.
better be, or I'm flying helmet up rioting.
All right.
Till next time.
Peace
Peace.
out.